Hey guys, so I'm back again, just continuing off of the last video that I was just recording, where we set up this free roam scenario. Um, I'm going to be running New Haven Line train 1707, which is an express out of New Canaan, all the way to Grand Central Terminal in the morning. It's a 5:33 departure out of New Canaan, making all local stops to Rye and then expressing straight to 125th Street, and then Grand Central. So I'm gonna hit play. We're gonna go into the scenario, and yeah, enjoy the ride. So for those of you that maybe weren't watching the last video, I have the schedule pulled up on my phone, so I know exactly what time we're doing at each station. Alright, so select. I typically use the F3 HUD. I feel like the F4 HUD is too obstructive, blocks too many things. I'm gonna turn on the headlights. These will turn on. There we go. How do you turn on? I've never tried this. Or I guess those are on. I don't know, because sometimes I feel like the ditch lights are on, and then sometimes they're not on. So I don't know exactly what governs that on the M8. But alright, so the train is scheduled to depart New Canaan at 5:34. We're starting around 5:15, so that gives us about 10 minutes to shunt the train in from the siding into the platform area. So we're gonna do a quick brake test. To make sure the brakes actually work. Alright, so brake test is good, horn test is good. Make sure that the switches are set to put me on the main line, switch back into the station. Switches are good. I'm gonna move the reverser into forward. And this right here. Alright, we're good. Probably turn off the cab signaling for now. I'm not sure if... Right. Is this thing even on? Okay, control... Cut out. Alright. So leave it. I'm gonna leave the cab I'm gonna leave the cab signaling cut out until we make it to the main line. Because I'm not absolutely positive whether or not the signaling actually works. Whether it works on the New Canaan branch. Okay, so I should be clear of that switch. I'm gonna check. Yes, I'm well clear of that switch. Ooh, that's the long distance. Okay, so we're gonna change the switch now, so I can bring the train into the platform for boarding. That's good. And then now we have to change cabins. So the way you can do that is you can do it through the F4 HUD and hit this if you want to, but you could also, there's a keyboard shortcut that you can use. I think it's Control and then the addition sign. So Control plus, yeah, that'll do it. That'll switch cabs. All right, so now we're on this side. I think the lights carry over, so cut the ATC out. And then every time you switch ends, you have to do a brake test. So we'll do a quick brake test now. Alright, brake test. It's good. Brake test is good. So we're going to bring the train into the terminal. Whoops. Alright, forgot to set the reverser. That's not good. Alright, now we're in forward. Now we can bring the train into the terminal. So you might have noticed that these sounds are not the sounds that come originally with the DLC. These are custom sounds from me. You can, like, the physics are also custom, so the acceleration rates have been changed, brake rate has been changed as well. I'll post the links to the physics mods in the description of this video. I strongly advise that if you haven't checked them out yet, to actually check them out, because in my opinion, it just makes operating this equipment so much more realistic. Because I don't know, but the way DTG built this train, they basically recycled almost all of the sounds straight from the Javelin high-speed train set. So there is almost nothing prototypical about the way the original M8 is coded. So yeah, check it out. I think you'll like what you see. Alright, so we're gonna dump shut off the headlights. How many cars did I manage to platform? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's about right. New Canaan is a 5-car platform. So I'm gonna switch cabs again, bring it back to the front cab. Honestly, I'm not sure why this cab signaling isn't lit up, but I'll cut it back in, and if it doesn't work, I'll just cut it back out later. It's not a big deal for me. I'm gonna charge the train now, I guess. Yeah, I'll do the brake test now. Okay, so we're not scheduled to depart New Canaan for another 7 minutes. Let's turn the headlights on. Huh, I wonder why it's doing that. Oh, okay, alright. I know why. It's just that's just a distance thing in the sound code. So as you get closer to the train, the HVAC gets louder. Whatever. Gonna open the doors, let the passenger board. Now, while in free roam, the doors don't you don't have any control over how long the doors stay open, which is I feel like that's odd, but you know, it's just something you have to deal with. And also, there's a minor glitch. You'll notice that even though I have brakes applied, when I'm stopped at the station, like, the train will still, like, inch, which is really odd. I don't know why it does that, but basically, if you leave the train sitting here long enough, it would probably take an entire day, or maybe longer than a day, but I could probably leave this sitting here, and this train will inch its way all the way to Grand Central. I don't know why it does that, but whatever. It's not really a huge concern of mine, per se. Okay, so cab light off. Yeah, I'm gonna make a quick cut because I don't want to sit here for another 5 minutes just talking. I'm not really good at that, so I'm gonna cut this here and start recording again when we get closer to the actual departure time. Alright, hey guys, I'm back. So it's getting close to 5:33, so we're about to, once it hits 5:33, I'm gonna open the doors one more time to let the last passengers on, and then we will depart for our scheduled run. Before we do that, I just want to make note of, you should be able to see the mouse, but I want to make note of the operating screen. It took me a while to notice this actually, but it actually tells you a lot of stuff. So see the little circles right now that are orange, that's your brake, that's your friction brake indicators. If they're orange, that means the friction brakes are applied. These squares here, the ones that aren't lit up, those are your motor indicators. They're green for motoring and yellow for dynamic braking. You'll notice that later. And then these green tiny rectangles up here, those are your door indicators. So I'm going to open the doors now, and you should see the rear 5 cars will open up on the right side. So if I open the doors, alright, so you see the rear well, it said the rear 4 cars, but the rear 5 cars should be open on the right side. So this is the front of the train, this is the back of the train, whatnot. Put the reverser forward. Leave the ATC cut in until it acts up. Doors are closed. We're good to go. Next stop is Talmadge Hill. We are due in at 5:38. Alright, so rolling brake test. If I can get this thing to 0. It's really hard to get this thing to 0. Alright, brake test is good. It's good enough. As we progress down the line, I will probably show you proper braking technique with the M8, because it's sort of there is a tiny learning curve to being able to brake this train properly into a station, simply because of the way DTG coded in the braking script. Like it's not exactly accurate to life, but if you practice with it enough, it does, you will get the hang of it. So we'll go over that once we hit the main line. What I'm going to be doing while I'm on the new Canaan branch is I will be stopping the train at these stations with the first car on the platform. I will attempt to do that because my logic here is that the last 5 cars platformed at New Canaan, so most people are in the last 5 cars right now. So as we progress down the branch, I want to fill the first 3 and 4 cars up. So I'm surprised I haven't gotten an alerter. My signal speed is still 0. Guess we'll see how that goes. Oh, there it is. Alright, I'm gonna have to deactivate this. Now it does that. I can reactivate it now. So ATC is cut in. I will run with it cut in since this train actually is compatible with the signal system. And in typical Metro North fashion, we are going to be late for the first couple of stops at least. But as far as I'm concerned, there is a lot of schedule padding. So just because we're late into the first few stations doesn't mean that we still won't make it to Grand Central on time. So I guess we'll see how that goes. I'm currently getting a steady 25 frames a second, which is okay for this route, I suppose. But, you know, you could always wish for better. Alright, so as you're watching me come into this station, watch the operating screen. You will see the colors change and whatnot with respect to what I mentioned earlier. Alright, if I spotted this stop correctly, the front 3 cars should open. Okay, that's odd. Alright, so the operating screen indicators are not displaying correctly, probably because this is a custom consist that I built in Consist Editor. So the door indicators probably aren't going to display properly, so I'm just going to check out here. Yes. Ooh, that's a lot of passengers. But yes, the front 3 cars have platformed at this stop. Alright, so we're going to proceed onward. There's also one more thing I want to point out. In the tractive effort bar indicator, the tractive effort portion of this bar should be green, and the dynamic brake effort should show up as red. But I don't know why it wasn't coded that way. I guess because the information was never relayed properly to DTG. But so both bars are white as of the moment, which is, that's a minor thing, but you know, for perfectionists like me, I do notice it. Alright, next stop is Springdale at 5:42. We are already late, but whatever, because I don't really care. It's realistic, isn't it? Isn't Metro North always late? We'll make up that time later on in the route. gonna change the brake indicator here so that it displays. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, that sucks. I'm gonna show you how the dynamic brake is blended into the train brake. It's purely based off of the brake pipe pressure. So, as we come into the stop, okay, good. Let's check the doors first. Alright, so apparently I didn't make the... Okay, the first car should be opening, so we're just gonna pretend the first car actually opened. Alright, that's 4-car platform. Okay, we're good. So... let's see. I'll show you how the dynamic brake is blended in later. I'm sort of already running behind. Glenbrook, 545. Alright, so I platformed the first car, and the next 4 cars after that. Good. Alright. Next stop is Stamford at 550. So we're about 3 minutes late out of Stamford. Okay, so I'm gonna take a little bit of a quick delay here and show you how this is coded in. So the range of dynamic braking is controlled by the brake pipe pressure. So brake pipe pressure at 150 means dynamic brake is released. There's no dynamic brake. And I believe that when brake pipe pressure goes to I want to say 78, so 78 is maximum dynamic brake. So as soon as you see brake pipe pressure hit 78, that means you have maximum dynamic brake. It's about 45% of a brake application on the master controller. So that's just for reference. Alright, so next stop is Old Greenwich. We're already really late now. We're supposed to be at Old Greenwich at 5:53. Whatever. Now the key to braking with the M8 is at a reasonable length, with a reasonable length consist, like say 8 cars or 10 cars, you definitely don't want to be going over 45 miles an hour once you hit the station platform. So if the station is about 8 cars long or 10 cars long, you don't want to be going over 45 miles an hour when you hit the platform. And by then you should be braking to some extent. Usually I would say the maximum speed you can be coming into any station and have a full service brake, which is 45% brake on the controller, is probably 50 miles an hour if you have a 10 car station. That way your train will come to a stop right at the end of the platform. It takes some time to get used to because the dynamics do take about 3 to 4 seconds to fully apply. But you know, after a couple times of practicing, you get the feel for it. I'll let my operation speak for itself. Maybe you'll learn by watching. It's sort of hard to explain sometimes. Next stop after Old Greenwich is Riverside at 55. so we're late for that stop as well. But like I said, it's not a big deal. Alright, rear 5 only on this station. Alright. Next stop is Greenwich. We should have actually departed Greenwich by now, but So we're about 3 minutes behind schedule. That's not terrible, I guess. Alright, next stop, Portchester. Scheduled departure is 6:04. Still hovering around like 20 frames, 22 frames a second. I mean, it seems smooth enough, doesn't it? Doesn't look too bad. Alright, so as soon as I hit the platform, I'm going to take a full service, and we should stop before the end of the platform. Should stop before the end of the platform. Alright. Scheduled departure, next stop, Rye, at 6:07. Alright, this is Rye. We should have departed about 2.5 minutes ago, but that's a pretty good time. This train will be expressing to a Harlem 125th Street. So next stop is a Harlem 125th Street. Scheduled arrival 6:34. I remember when this section of track used to actually be 90. I think a number of years ago, Metro North downgraded the MAS on the New Haven line. Train speeds used to be slightly faster in most sections. I think most of the sections that are now 70 used to be 75. This short section of 80 between Harrison and New Rochelle used to be 90. Alright, so for those of you who are familiar with the line characteristics around this section, there should be a 30-mile-an-hour restriction coming around the curve that's just after New Rochelle. It's not coded into this map for some reason, so it doesn't show up, but it's there. Alright, another thing is that after we pass section where we change power modes from AC to DC, you're gonna notice another bug that's still present in this equipment, in that if I'm operating in an equipment that originated as AC equipment, overhead power, as soon as I change to DC, or third rail, I'm gonna lose traction motor sounds during the motoring phase. So there's going to be no traction motor sound during acceleration, but for some reason you're still going to get dynamic brake sound. So when the train is braking, you'll hear the traction motors, but not when it's accelerating. I'm not sure exactly why this happens. I haven't inspected the code thoroughly enough to know that for sure, but it is still an issue. And I'm hoping that sometime in the future, when I'm not as busy as I am now, I'll be able to look into it a little further and see if it's actually a fixable issue. But my intuition right now is telling me that it's part of the train scripting, which would mean that it's not fixable, but I haven't checked enough to know for sure. Alright, so the key to making a proper mode change in this direction is to drop the pantograph before you hit third rail territory. So to drop the pantograph, I'm going to use the keyboard short key, which is P. But you could also do it through the F4 HUD or the actual switch, which is to the right. I'm signaling with my mouse. I think it's over there. So we're coming up on third rail, so I'm going to drop the pantographs. And I'm going to wait for the entire train to be in third rail territory. And then I'm going to reactivate in third rail. So now we're in DC. Train's still coasting. Pantographs are down. Yep, pans are down. Now if I take power, you will notice that you shouldn't hear traction motor sounds. They won't play. At least I don't think they're playing. I don't know. Hold on. I mean, this is the first time I've operated this train since the port over to TS2016, so I don't know if there were any changes to the game engine which might have fixed this problem. So I won't be able to tell until I hit the series of speed restrictions that you see coming up. We'll confirm when we get there whether or not the traction motor sounds actually play when the train is accelerating. And remind you that we're due into Harlem 125th Street at 6:34, so I think we're still on time. Alright, moment of truth. Oh, there are actually traction motor sounds. Okay. Maybe the issue was fixed when they updated to TS2016. I don't know. I'm not complaining. I used to have to actually end recordings at Mount Vernon and exit the actual simulation and switch to a DC train to be able to get the traction motor sounds to play properly. So this is great news. At least if this is actually the case. I don't know. I'd have to do a test with a non-custom set to be sure, but looks like we're golden. I mean, at least I'm not aware of any new bug fixes that came out for the the M8 DLC. It could also be the result of a bug fix, but I haven't, as far as I know, I haven't received any updated files from Dovetail regarding the M8 since last December. So The curve is supposed to be 30. This is supposed to be a 30-mile-an-hour curve, but it does say 35. That limit is not coded into the route. Alright, so you'll notice that we're at Harlem, 125th Street, at around 6:32. So we went from being 2 to 3 minutes behind schedule to actually being 2 minutes ahead of schedule. We were due to depart Harlem 125th Street at 6:34. That shows you exactly how much schedule padding there is built into these schedules. So it really, you could be around 5 minutes late and still make it to the terminal on time, simply because there is so much schedule padding. And also, granted, we didn't run into any major signal delays or train traffic, so that also contributed to our ability to actually make time up between Rye and Harlem 125th Street. Just for the sake of the schedule, I'm going to sit here until 6:34 before departing, just to see how much schedule padding there actually is between Harlem 125th Street and Grand Central. We are due to depart Harlem and 125th Street at 6:34, and we are due to arrive at Grand Central at 6:45. So that's an 11-minute run time. So we'll check it out. if I recall correctly, we will be platforming on track, either track 25 or 24. My memory's sort of fuzzy. I set the scenario up probably almost an hour or so ago. But we're definitely in the mid-20s, I know that for sure. Also, the track limit within Grand Central Terminal is 10 miles an hour, not 15. 10 miles an hour. So we will be following that today. Also, at the next signal that's coming up that you see in the HUDs at 0.4 miles, you should receive a limited aspect there. So the next signal it should be limited. You should be restricted to limited speed, and the signal after should be restricted to medium speed, and then the signal after that is restricted speed. So we will be following that. I mean, in real life you would get those aspects, but since it's a simulation, they probably overlooked it, or again, that information probably wasn't actually sent to them. So it's by no fault of the developer or anything. We are platforming at track. Come on. Track 24. We will be platforming at track 24 today. alright, that's the end of the run. Yeah, so hope you enjoyed the ride, and if you're interested in how I set up this scenario, because you might know that you can't select New Canaan as a starting point in QuickDrive. I've put the link to that in the description of this video, so check it out if you're interested. And yeah, that's it. Until next time, see ya.